Beatles were active throughout the 1960s before disbanding in 1970. They were young boys from Liverpool when they began playing together in the late 1950s. These Merseyside lads perfected their art in Hamburg, entertained tens of millions in the United States, and captivated the world. Although they disbanded over 50 years ago, the Beatles continue to be the best-selling musicians of all time. At the outset, Paul McCartney and John Lennon met at the age of 15 and 16 respectively. Lennon played in a group called the Quarrymen, and McCartney was invited by another member of the band to join. Subsequently, George Harrison, also 15, became a member of the band. During the following years, the band experimented with a variety of titles: Johnny and the Moondogs, the Silver Beatles and the Silver Beats. By 1960, the Beatles had come to a definitive formation. Prior to Ringo Starr joining in 1962, the group had cycled through several drummers. In 1960, the band performed in Hamburg with Pete Best handling percussion duties. However, in November of the same year, Harrison was deported from Germany as he had falsified information regarding his age to the German authorities. McCartney and Best were also deported just 1 week later. The following year, they revisited Hamburg and experienced a surge in popularity in Liverpool. Upon returning to England, they were introduced to Brian Epstein, a fellow Liverpudlian, who became their manager in early 1962. Brian Epstein, the Beatles' manager, was famously dubbed the fifth Beatle by McCartney. Epstein was instrumental in transforming the band's image, replacing their scruffy attire with smart suits and encouraging a more professional attitude. He insisted on no more eating, smoking, or swearing on stage during their performances. The band's growth was evident as they secured their first recording contract within 6 months of their new management. In June 1962, the Beatles made their first recording at EMI Studios on Abbey Road. The initial 4 tracks recorded were Bésame Mucho, Ask Me Why, P.S. I Love You, and the renowned Love Me Do. George Martin produced these songs as he believed that the drummer at the time, Pete Best, was not meeting expectations, a view shared by the other members. To replace Best, the band recruited local drummer Richard Starkey, who had already adopted the name Ringo Starr. With their new manager's assistance, the Beatles started performing to larger audiences at much better venues than ever before. In 1963, their album Please Please Me reached the top of the charts in the United Kingdom, and Epstein secured them a slot on The Ed Sullivan Show in the United States. Please Please Me was the foremost among 11 consecutive albums to top the charts in the United Kingdom. Their 4th single, She Loves You, became their first single to sell over 1 million copies. The Beatles conducted 4 tours of the United Kingdom in 1963, attracting over 15 million viewers to their live performances on the television program Sunday Night at the London Palladium. Following a brief visit to Sweden, hundreds of enthusiastic fans greeted the band at the airport upon their return. Subsequently, approximately 4,000 fans congregated at Heathrow Airport to see them off when they departed for America. Upon their arrival in New York, they were met by thousands more fans. The Beatles made their way to the United States in February 1964 and delivered a performance on The Ed Sullivan Show just 2 days later. Their appearance drew over 1/3 of the US population at that time, with an astounding 73 million viewers. No other program in the country's history had ever attracted such an immense audience. In June and July 1964, the Beatles undertook a tour of Australia, Denmark, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. Within the span of 27 days, they performed at 37 shows. Following this, they returned to the United States and played in 23 cities. Each of their 30 half-hour concerts was attended by over 10,000 enthusiastic fans. During the tour, they had an encounter with the prominent folk musician Bob Dylan, leading to an incorporation of each other's distinct style into their own compositions. It was a gradual fusion of folk music and rock and roll. During their tour of the United States in 1964, the Beatles encountered local segregation policies. Upon discovering that the audience of their Florida concert had been forcibly segregated, they refused to perform until integration was permitted. Lennon stated, "We never play to segregated audiences and we aren't going to start now." In 1965, at a dinner party, John Lennon and George Harrison were covertly given LSD in their coffee by an acquaintance. This led to regular psychedelic usage, sometimes inclusive of Ringo Starr, and eventually Paul McCartney. Their music was influenced by this drug use, resulting in tracks like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and I Am the Walrus. In June of the same year, all 4 band members were appointed to the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. The band wrote fresh material, with their high points being Rubber Soul and Revolver. They also performed in distant places, including India and the Philippines. The musicians became discontented with their live shows, as the uproarious fans would drown out their music. Several of the Beatles' later songs, including Eleanor Rigby, necessitated the involvement of additional musicians, and the band came to the realization that they could not accurately give them justice without such support. Having been touring non-stop for 4 years, performing more than 400 concerts globally, they culminated their running of commercial gigs with a performance in Candlestick Park, San Francisco, in August of 1966. Subsequent to their final concert, the Beatles retired from undertaking tours so as to concentrate on producing records. In November 1966, the Beatles began recording Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band at the studio. Their music became increasingly complex, requiring up to 40 extra musicians at a time. In February 1967, they released Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane. They continued to create more music thereafter. In 1967, the Beatles produced 2 films, namely Magical Mystery Tour and Yellow Submarine. They also released their single All You Need Is Love. However, their world was shattered by the sudden passing of their manager, Brian Epstein. The Beatles were devastated and mourned their friend profoundly. As Lennon put it, "We collapsed when they received news of Epstein's death. I knew that we were in trouble then. I didn't have any false beliefs about our capacity besides playing music, and I was apprehensive." Over the course of several years, Brian Epstein faced challenges with addiction. In the midst of the Beatles' demanding tour schedule in the mid-60s, Epstein ingested stimulants to counteract his fatigue. The result was an addiction to sedatives. Sadly, in 1967, at the age of only 32, Epstein passed away due to an overdose of sleeping pills and alcohol. This tragedy deeply affected each of the musicians whose careers Epstein had overseen for the previous 5 years. In several ways, the demise of Epstein marked the start of the end for this legendary foursome. After Epstein's passing, Harrison stated that the Beatles have been in the doldrums for at least a year. Ever since Mr. Epstein passed away, it's never been the same. Struggling without his guidance, the band faced difficulties. McCartney endeavored to maintain band solidarity by filling Epstein's role, but his fellow band members resented what they saw as his overly controlling management style. After Brian passed away, Lennon said in an interview with Rolling Stone, "We fell apart. Paul assumed leadership, but what is leading us when we're just going in circles? It was then that we disintegrated." They broke up in less than 3 years after Epstein's demise. By 1969, the band had become fractured and was constantly arguing. In his 7-hour documentary, Get Back, Peter Jackson utilizes video and audio recordings from that time period to illustrate the gradual disintegration of the group that had been performing together for almost a decade. A lot of the band's problems were due to McCartney's attempts to lead them, which his fellow band members grew to resent. McCartney was responsible for writing most of the songs, pressuring his bandmates to maintain a strict schedule, and even scolding Lennon for not writing enough. "We became tired of being sidemen for Paul," stated Lennon following the band's separation. Tension regarding creative freedom existed between Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison. Over the years, Lennon and McCartney composed the majority of their songs, but in 1969, Harrison was eager to exhibit his abilities. However, upon presenting his original songs, the established songwriting duo dismissed his contributions. Excessive direction from McCartney towards him caused tension for Harrison. Harrison believed that McCartney was being bossy and overbearing, leading him to lash out and even walk out, stating, "I think I'll be leaving the band now. Get a replacement." Despite returning after being persuaded, Harrison persisted in recording his own songs away from his bandmates. Lennon supported Harrison, who subsequently produced the enduring hit, All Things Must Pass. In spite of the difficulties in their final year, the talented musicians produced some of their finest works, such as Let It Be, Don't Let Me Down, and The Long and Winding Road. The group's disagreement over who their manager should be ultimately led to McCartney disbanding the group in December 1970. He hinted at his desire to depart earlier in that year upon releasing his debut solo album. Lennon also had a solo performance that year and played with his Plastic Ono band. However, it was McCartney who exploited the breakup of the band to initiate his solo career. Both Lennon and Harrison informed McCartney earlier in the year that they intended to depart from the band, and he advised them not to reveal the news to the public. However, a few months later he made the announcement himself while releasing his album. "We were all wounded that he didn't inform us of his plans," Lennon stated during an interview with Rolling Stone. "Goodness gracious, he receives all of the recognition for it. I made a mistake by not following Paul's lead, who used the occasion to sell a record." Despite his dissatisfaction with McCartney's actions, Lennon's assessment of the Beatles' dissolution was both fatalistic and tranquil. After experiencing Beatlemania for years, he and his bandmates eventually stopped subscribing to the myth of the Beatles and recalled that they were four distinct individuals. The media attempted to attribute the end of a particular era to Yoko Ono, the wife of Lennon. However, Lennon himself did not assist in quelling such speculation when he shared with Rolling Stone his statement, "I had to either be married to them or Yoko, and I chose Yoko." In 1969, they just got married and she frequently accompanied him to the recording studio. Even though Lennon's marital relationship happened at the same time as he and McCartney began to drift apart, none of the band members held Ono responsible for the slow dissolution of the group. Ultimately, it is not surprising that a group of musicians who started playing together as adolescent boys in Liverpool eventually went their separate ways. They traveled globally, developed their perspectives, and explored the limits of their collective potential. Eventually, they could not continue as they had been due to rigid routines and diverging visions. After going their separate ways, they each pursued their solo careers and left behind a lasting heritage of more than 200 songs. Thank you for staying with us here at Brain Outside the Box as we delved into the unparalleled journey of the Beatles. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement is crucial for us to continue bringing you in-depth and valuable content. Until next time, keep thinking outside the box. Goodbye.